Alright, so I watched a TV series recently called Shogun, the first season. And I'm gonna be a bit unstructured this time compared to how I usually do things. So, what a series! I can tell that a lot of passion, work and care went into it. The quality is high, doubt I can recall many series this well made. However, it took me a while to figure this one out, but eventually I came to a conclusion. The cause and effect here don't make sense to me. And this problem arises fairly early, I think episode 3, but then gets worse as the time goes on. Actually, the beginning too, but why even... okay, whatever. So this is spoilers, full-on spoilers, and I do recommend this series. I just what I have more to say than the usual enjoy and dislike, and I feel like if you're actually looking for that, you can see the universal praise and come to your own conclusions there. Instead, I'll be discussing what actually happens, something I don't usually do. So, first of all, Mariko. This one is still fresh in my memory and as such the closest to heart. She, throughout this whole series, has been the rock and anchor for the Anjin, to ground himself and make some sort of sense of this world and, frankly, of the idiocy of this land. Acting confusing at times, sometimes having amusing moments, yada yada yada. But then, it felt like she was finally following. That's a difficult word to say. You know what ice does? That's the thing. So the Icy Queen was losing her touch and not acting as if her existence is worse than death. She starts that way. She ends that way. But the middle was done in such a way that I believed for a happy ending for her. And the transition back into the obedient slave to Torinaga did not make sense to me. But the worst part was the final act. So facts. Assassins show up. Mission is to not let Mariko use the permit. Let's ignore who sides with whom and who ordered the hit. They waltz in, somehow fail to kill the lovebirds, and everyone escapes into the warehouse. First, how are trained assassins failing thus far? It would take one well-placed shot or a throw or something sharp to at least injure somebody from the main retinue. No collateral damage, no damage at all, just nameless goons dead. For something that was more realistic thus far, this just felt wrong. But I'm bitching, not my main point here. It's what she did, standing in the explosion and letting it happen, as if it fucking matters. For one, explosions are messy. If one ever went to subreddit combat footage, then you'd know how terrible that stuff could be. Explosions are just an atrocity on anyone's body. It's not exactly an authority, but something to keep in mind. 2. Who's to say anyone would care what she did or how she did it? Either way, the plan was to kill her. She died. Acting all dramatic and dying in an explosion was stupid. The obvious idea is that it's done just so Anjin gets his moment of trauma. In reality, it makes zero sense to me how it provokes anyone into action. Why did the hostages get released? Why didn't anyone ever raise the stink thus far? How did anyone here even get into a position of power if they need a spine donor to stand upright? But most importantly, why did her death do anything? The scene before that at the gates should have had the same effect. Her seppuku would have had even more effect. The explosion death is simply bait and switch, and it makes a lot less sense than the other 2 times she should have died. Public displays and statements versus unnamed assassins and no witnesses. At least no witnesses who aren't aligned the same way. Then there's the whole posturing idea. It plays as if everything was Torinaga's plan. So he is called upon Osaka to the Council of Regents. He retires instead. Now they need a 5th. 1 billion years passes, they find another one. Suddenly the brother of Toranaga is as a backstabber, and it just so happens that the attempt to get payback completely backfires. Again, 1 billion years spent in mourning, and nothing happening to Toranaga. His vassal kills himself in protest. Another eternity of waiting. Okay, I get it. Bureaucracy, red tape, yada yada yada. It was established early. However, if this Osaka man is such a warmonger, why in the hell is he allowing all those enormous delays? He's essentially not doing anything because the plot dictates so. Okay, so Toranaga is the enemy. Fine. Why not do literally anything? And why did the mother of the successor not do anything for the first half of the season and then suddenly wakes up and orders everyone around through extreme power of motherly passive aggressiveness? Only to fall for Mariko's ploy and pledge secret allegiance. It doesn't make sense to me. Okay, if it doesn't come across clearly, my problem is as such. Things which happen, every event, every plot point happens because Toranaga saw it coming and orchestrated it this way. It doesn't matter if it's illogical, it doesn't matter if it's a lucky break, it doesn't even matter if something completely outside the realm of possibility happens. It simply happens the way he wants it, because he wants it. I don't know about other people, but I have seen Haruhi Suzumiya, and I don't think John Blackthorne is Kyon. Again, thinking back on it, the overall premise is simple. Here's a foreigner, the audience is supposed to identify with him. However, this land is very strange, so there is no way Bakagaijin would ever understand the depth of it. So anything, any strange development, action, whatever, all of it is down to Japan being Japan. It doesn't matter if it's illogical, it doesn't matter if it's actually doesn't make sense. Here's Toranaga and he knows exactly how it all works. While Anjin is here to observe and most importantly serve. So I do think this is extremely well done, and I do believe the first 3 episodes are breathtaking. I was waiting for the whole time to see Rodriguez again. Actually, that's one thing I didn't mention. Contrary to what one would expect, this series actually has some comedy. Very minor amount, but it's there. All of it tied to John running his mouth. Or, well, Rodriguez doing the same thing. My personal favorite is probably when John is trying to get Yabushige's help and he refuses. Then John talks to Mariko a bit and says something along the lines of, "Oh, I don't trust him either. He's a fucking shitface, but I need him." Yeah, I feel like I had his mannerism before, but I lost him again. Anyway, and of course the Japanese don't react to this provocation in any way. I wished at one point that someone would be like, "What did you just call me?" That would have been brilliant. Actually, while I am at it, the crew. The whole time John was begging to be reunited with the ship and crew. Dangled in front of him, obviously as a leverage to use the man as much as possible. But when it finally does happen, they are drinking themselves into a stupor, and instead of wanting to leave, just continue, and the man actually fights John. I mean, I can see the sense in this, but this was the biggest disappointment of the entire series for me. They could have been dead, or in some sort of trouble, or fitting in and not wanting to leave, or anything else. Instead, no, fuck you, we stay in this country which hates us. Fuck, this does feel like a slap in the face. I know the series is called Shogun, but considering how integral the foreigner is to the series, to basically discard the people closest to him like that feels insulting. Oh, and I disliked the ending too. Felt like the plotting was getting weaker and weaker as the time went on. For one, it's obvious who burned the ship. Either he is complicit by not doing anything to people who burned it, or he simply did it himself. 2. Killing people for no reason at all. He knows he won't find anyone, it's simply done to quote-unquote test Anjin. Why in the hell are people agreeing to even have this asshole here if every time he shows up, life in this tiny village gets worse? Now, even the lord of it is executed. Yabushige was a great character. An asshole and a backstabber, but great for the story. And lastly, how does Anjin not say anything? What did he even mean that he was feeding him shit the whole time? What was that part? What part was the lie? What was even his goal? Whatever even happened in that confrontation? I was so confused by both sides of it. Him trying to stop the witch hunt made sense. Everything else did not. So yeah, I'll probably check out more when it comes out. Seasons 2 and 3 already announced after all, but I feel like at this rate the quality would drop off a cliff. Just being pretty and little else.